Well, get to a top 40 extra on my fantasy playlist July 30th, 1989 because there are so many. Well, right here, where well, deadgummit, my coordination's off. There it is, right there where my fingers are at. And some of the top 40 extras will eventually make it to the top 40 of my fantasy playlist, which includes Soul Provider by Michael Bolton. Anybody remember that one? Nina Cherry, Kisses in the Wind. That was a Lost 45, although a top 10, maybe a top 20, a runner-up to Buffalo Stance. Her big hit, Sacred Emotion by Donny Osmond. Thinking of Ozzy Osbourne. For some reason, conflating Ozzy Osbourne with Donny Osmond. Donny Osmond with Sacred Emotion as a top 40 extra. That would be a top 40 song on my fantasy playlist. And if I could turn back time by Cher, boy, she was making a big comeback back in the late 80s. A stunning comeback, and so did the B-52's. Top 40 extra by the B-52's on this fantasy playlist, July 30th, 1989, Channel C. First single from the Cosmic Thing album, produced by Don Was. Two big producers worked on this album. They started working on this album with Niles Rodgers of the group Chic. It was at the Sigmund Sound Studios in New York City. They cut some tracks with him, and then they went to upstate New York and cut some tracks with Don Was. Cut about 4 tracks with Don Was at the Dreamland Studio, and this was rustic. This was country, baby. That you could hear the crickets outside. With it being so laid back and blissful, kind of helps the creative juices flow a little bit better. One night, Don Was, he drove up a mountain. This is how bucolic country, out in the country, like that song by Three Dog Night. Don Was, the producer, he drove up a mountain one night. Near a Zen monastery, he saw the northern lights. And there was something else. It's like summer camp. Almost like summer camp for him. And probably for the group members too. They wrote a lot of songs for this album. B-52's up in New York, around Woodstock, New York. And this was after they broke up for a while, which came in the aftermath of the tragic death of Ricky Wilson, guitar player. And the group was absolutely devastated. There was even some uncertainty if the group would ever get back together again. But they did. They started writing songs and then got together with Niles Rodgers and then Don Was. Love Shack was recorded at the Dreamland Studio up in upstate New York. This album, perhaps sobered by the death of Ricky Wilson, rather, because it was a little bit more mature, maybe a little bit more political, a little bit more introspective, this album, than some of their earlier material. But boy, they just went into a rapture on Love Shack. You got the grief that followed the death of Ricky Wilson. You got the grief, you got the loss. It just tears a hole in you as a void. But the inverse of that is joy. And you hear the joy, you hear the whoops, you hear the hollers, you hear the party animal that was Love Shack. And it was, and here's the thing about Love Shack. I know I'm getting off topic. It's supposed to be talking about Channel C, but Love Shack, which was the second single, when I did research for this record, couldn't believe it. The group members were shopping the song to the radio stations and they would not play it. And even their record company thought that Love Shack was not commercial enough. But boy, they were proved wrong. And then Rome came out, a little bit more pre-commercial compared to some of their other earlier material. And of course, one of my favorite songs, Deadbeat Club, the 4th single off the album Cosmic Thing. Love that record. One of my favorite songs by the B-52's. Channel C, about a radio station full of static and on all day, and it was just a nice record. But didn't do too well, though. It was really, here's the thing. I think they picked a song that was non-commercial but was alternative sounding to get the young people back into, the college students, the new wave fans, to get them back into The B-52's, the music of the B-52's. Let's put out this alternative sounding record. College stations started to play it, started to gin up some momentum, put out Love Shack, and Love Shack was an international hit all over the board. Wrote down the chart positions for Love Shack. No, actually I didn't, but it was top 10 here in the States and in the UK and lots of other countries around the world. B-52's, I go back to rock, remember Rock Lobster? It was not a big hit. Actually, their biggest hit before Love Shack was Rock Lobster, but that only went to number 56. Number 56 on Billboard's Hot 100 went to number 3 in Australia. Can you believe that? And then there was Planet Claire, the brilliant, the spaced out Planet Claire just sucked you into an alternative universe of just sheer fun and campiness and space cool, science fiction cool maybe. She came from Planet Claire. And she drove a Plymouth Satellite. Man, like a 57 Chevy. Fell in love with that record back in the summer of 1980, and then they popped out another one, Private Idaho, in the fall of 1980. Private Idaho did chart on Billboard's Hot 100, but was not played that much on Top 40 radio. Went to number 74 on Billboard's Hot 100, but went to number 11 in Australia. That's the thing, when the B-52's first started out, they were just another new wave band like Devo and R.E.M. They were simply not embraced by the mainstream audience. But boy, they had legions of followers, beloved by many college students and new wave fans. The B-52's, they're one of the cool bands to listen to in the late 70s and early 80s. And now we're getting into 1989, cool band to listen to again. B-52's, Channel C. Let me check my notes to see if I missed anything. No, I guess I didn't. Don Was the producer. Oh, God, I forgot to mention something about Don Was. I knew I forgot something. That's why I have to consult my notes at the last minute when I finish up this video, because I know I forgot something that I want to mention. Don Was, big producer back in the late 80s. He produced Love Shack. He produced Channel C. I've already mentioned him earlier in the video. Don Was a member of Was Not Was. One of the founding members of Was Not Was. Walk the Dinosaur, big hit for them in 1989. Some souls out there might remember Spy and the House of Love back in 1988. Boy, bring back some memories from back in the day, 30 years ago. Well, here is B-52's with Channel C, a Top 40 Extra on my fantasy playlist, July 30th, 1989.